Today I'll be talking about the 2006 movie Click, directed by Frank Caracci and starring Adam Sandler and Kate Beckinsale. Of course, when I say the name Adam Sandler, I expect to hear a mass of simultaneous cheers and groans. There are some people who truly love the Happy Madison franchise and enjoy anything that these actors grasp their hands on. However, there are others who wouldn't touch an Adam Sandler movie with a 10-foot pole, unless, of course, it was Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore. Where do I stand with this? Well, I can agree with points on both sides of the Adam Sandler fence, but we'll get there. So what's the main premise of this movie? Well, you have a workaholic father with a beautiful wife and two lovely children. Wow, that sounds about American as apple pie. Which is weird, because I love my country, but I'm not a fan of apple pie. I know, call me a traitor. Anyway, Sandler's on a couch and causes minor chaos in the house when he reaches for a remote, but he grabs for 3 different remotes than the one he's trying to go for. And he's just trying to turn on the TV, and then he starts bitching and moaning about how life is just so hard now. There should be one remote for everything. And you can see where this is going pretty quick, can't you? Well, the setup's a bit forced, but yeah, it's on par with how much intelligence Adam Sandler cynically assumes his audience to have. And there's a swim meet for one of his kids, which is in direct conflict with something at work, of course, which happens to be a happy hour, and he tries to balance both things of work and life, but of course he lets work win again, and in his defense, he thinks it's like some big, acquisition at his architecture firm. Anyway, he messes up with his family, and they give him a really hard time, and they have Sean Astin, Sam from Lord of the Rings, in like a Speedo, which is weird, but okay, sure. And you can tell this lifeguard's going to get with Adam Sandler's wife, and, I don't even know, like, Adam Sandler's character's name in this movie. Like, he has a name, I think it's Michael, or something like that, but it's just Adam Sandler, man. Like, he's just playing himself. But this really isn't one of his, like, comedies. I mean, it's funny at times, but it's more supposed to be a serious or sentimental kind of movie. Okay, sure. I think one thing for me is that when I was younger, like when I was in like middle school or high school when this came out, this movie I really liked and I really enjoyed, and I thought it was really funny. And I'm not even really saying that to make a joke about it. I thought it was legitimately funny. And when I watched this in the last few months, to get myself back together and get a fresh perspective on it, I still laughed, but it wasn't the same. It didn't have the same amount of charm, which I guess describes my overall feel, but there are more things I want to talk about. So then this movie decides to start having a semblance of a plot when Adam Sandler goes to Bed Bath & Beyond, or as I like to call it, product placement plug, to find that universal remote to replace all of those crusty and nasty remotes that he has at his really nice house in suburbia. So there is a joke that I do find kind of funny in this store, and it's when Adam Sandler finds the Way Beyond section. I was like, okay, that's kind of clever. He runs into one of the actors that he always has in his darn movies. I think it's like the guy in like Dickie Roberts, like Nick Offerman, or maybe that's the guy from Parks and Rec. Don't get mad at me. So anyway, he goes past the cameo, and then he goes to Way Beyond, where there's even like I would say cameo, but he has a fairly decent part in this movie for Christopher Walken. And Walken really gives the remote to Sandler and sells it to him. And he ends up giving Sandler true control of the universe. Or does he? And I'm just going to address a few of my complaints about this movie right now. And there are spoilers in it, so spoilers. First off, the ending is cliche and frustrating to those who enjoy watching movies. Sandler goes on an entire journey of trying to fast forward, pause, and mute his life, with the remote becoming the controller of Sandler as opposed to the other way around. Sandler dies at the end, and it was all a dream. This ending, which is prominent in many movies, but a notable example being The Wizard of Oz, can be simultaneously good and bad. However, this effect was better the first time it happened as opposed to the 2000th time. Also, in the instance of this movie, it comes off as saying, if your life is headed down a dark path, you'll get a prophetic dream showing you the error of your ways. And life just makes me so mad. So anyway, it's just going to say that if your life is headed down a dark path, you'll get a prophetic dream showing you the error of your ways, and you'll be okay, because you get to experience the wrath of the bad decisions that you make without actually having to endure the wrath by really committing those decisions. Granted, it's better not to have to learn life lessons the hard way, and I really do mean that. But as part of a movie, it just voids the entire film that you just spent your time and maybe money on. And it just voids it even in the scope of the movie, too. And you think that someone's going through these rough life experiences and will slowly but surely end up making the right decision. And I wouldn't be as frustrated with the cop-out of this movie, except that before the dream was revealed, that this whole ending was revealed, it ended in a perfectly acceptable spot, with Sandler encouraging his son Ben not to follow in the error of his ways. Sandler recognizes that his son is starting to do the exact same shit that Sandler did his entire life. And he wants to make sure his son doesn't make those same mistakes. And even with that sentimental aspect of a movie, you know, of having a happy ending, you have some happiness in the fact that Adam Sandler learned his lesson and that his son is going to lead a better life. And then the entire movie just gets ruined. That it's just really, really frustrating for me. And it's just... it makes it feel like an entire waste of time. Okay, point made. To turn a bad ending into a good one is one thing, and to turn a good ending into a bad one is aggravating. But I guess it's nice for Adam Sandler himself to be able to mark a perfect scoreboard in his life from here on out. Yeah, I said that as a question the entire time. I guess it's good. And of course the remote pops up as, it was all a dream, or was it? And that's the final part of the cliche, which I guess Sandler wanted to make sure it was there. But at least Sandler threw the remote away. And I get that this cliche was, you know, kind of a feel-good thing. Like, you know, you have a happy ending. Haha, Sandler didn't really die. That'd be too depressing. He's alive. Don't worry. Surely he'll do all the right things now because of this one dream. Yeah, because we all listen to our one dreams, right? Right. Yeah. Of course we do. Got it. And it just makes me wonder if anyone really, you know, learns from them without dreaming the entire thing up, you know? Do we really learn anything, or do we just live in a big haze? I guess that's a question for another day. Another thing that really bothered me about this movie was just, there are things about it that are just plain weird and possibly a little insensitive, and I'm not really one to nitpick at all of the PC things, but even this movie made me cringe a little. And aside from that, you have David Hasselhoff as Adam Sandler's boss. And I don't know if he was cast that way because he was the most unlikely person to be Adam Sandler's boss. I mean, I know it was a paycheck, but aside from that, just why? And, you know, he says things like, these guys are Japanese, they can't wait for their fish to cook. And he has Sandler try to design an Arabian hoochie house. I mean, I snickered a little, but, you know, this movie plays off stereotypes, you know. Some basic humor. I mean, at least there were jokes that made me laugh that didn't depend on those. I don't know. And they actually have Rob Schneider and David Spade play these Arabian dudes. And I I didn't even notice it I definitely didn't notice when I was a kid. I didn't even notice it the first time I watched it. And then I watched it behind the scenes and they were talking about how Rob Schneider and David Spade had like worked on all these things to play the best Indians and I was just thinking, wow, or Arabians. I was just like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't remember that they were so good at this. I guess Rob Schneider actually learned Arabic for the part. Who knew? Um, and as I mentioned before, you have Sean Astin, Sam from Lord of the Rings, but most of the time he's always in a Speedo. And you would think, yeah, he's a lifeguard. He should be in at least a swim trunks or something, or at least like a lifeguard tank top or whatever. But he's always in this Speedo, and that wouldn't be so weird, except there's a scene towards the end of the movie when it's all like a formal cocktail party because Sandler's son is getting married. And this is the point in the movie where Sean Astin did hook up with Sandler's wife, as I said before, was going to happen. And they like tear off his suit and he's wearing a Speedo under all that. Which, why? That makes no sense. Like, he must have known he was getting the pants. Oh wait. Alright, fine. So Sandler's wife got stolen from him, Kate Beckinsale. And she doesn't really do a whole lot for this movie. She's great, but she's not really much of a character. She's just kind of a pawn in Sandler's game of chess that really gets like knocked out in round 3, of the whole chess game. Not very useful. When she is in it, she's charming. She makes me smile. There's a particularly nice scene of when they have Beckinsale and Sandler meet, and you have the Cranberries song Linger, just linger on the background. And there are a few fun cameos in this movie, too. I should probably, give this movie some credit where it's due. They have Jennifer Coolidge of Legally Blonde fame and some terrible movies of infamy, like Epic Movie, for one. And she plays an interesting kind of character. She's like Beckinsale's friend that's kind of hella crazy and hella horny and ends up hooking up with David Hasselhoff at the end of all this. That about sounds right. And she's kind of gets around a little bit. There's a funny line that Sandler mentions, about how she's already cheated on 3 husbands with their brothers. That was good. I laughed. You have Christopher Walken playing the character Morty, trying to indicate what his character really is. He's a little devilish, let's just put it that way. And he's done pretty well. He's so kooky in anything he does. Or I guess if he's not kooky, he's always just weird. I have to wonder what Walken's childhood was like. Was he running through it or was he walking through it? And you actually have Jonah Hill in this movie. He has a very small part in this movie as like teenage Ben, and Ben was like skinny, and then they showed that like Ben put on a lot of weight after the fact, and that's where Jonah Hill's character came in. This is before Jonah Hill was in Superbad, so he kind of like went in and out, and I definitely didn't know who he was when this movie came out, but watching this again, I was like, oh shit, that's Jonah Hill. And I looked it up, and sure it was. And I didn't even need to know to look at IMDb for that. That was all up here. Well, anyway, they have a foreshadowing of Sandler too, because this is the point where they like, make him get in a fat suit when he's like 40 and promoted, because he apparently is like 400 pounds now. And they foreshadow with Kate Beckinsale and saying that stop eating all those ding dong and put him down before you're that way later. They have a couple of other cameos too. You have Happy Days, Henry Winkler. You're gonna get mad at me, I know, but Henry Winkler as Sandler's dad, and you have Marge Simpson as Sandler's mom, and you even have James Earl Jones with some commentary on the extras menu of Sandler's DVD life. And this is really when the time of DVDs were big, you know, just before YouTube and just after DVDs were released, or like, you know, like 5 years after, whatever. Yeah, so they had this whole like DVD thing played out to the max, and you could tell what time it was then. And you also have Sandler too. I mean, he's a pretty big name. It's not really a cameo, but you know, he plays a pretty big part in this. He's that main character guy. He's not too bad, honestly. He's not. This movie is just so weird anyway. I mean, this is... I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. I think the best way to put it is that it means well, but it's Adam Sandler, so it's going to be a tad tasteless at times. I mean, you have him going on the slow-mo factor of the remote, and you have this chick in like a sports bra that's running, and you know, get it slowed down so that you see her boobs bounce around, and then he's trying to tap into my inner child, and I'm just saying, oh, Sandler, I'm trying to mature. This is not working for me. You're making this very hard to grow up, Sandler. But I guess he wants to remind me that there's still an inner kid in me and everyone else, even if they don't want to admit it. And that's really harmless in the scheme of what else this movie throws at you, though. It also, as I said before, talks about the hoochie houses of Arabia and just the different culture aspects with the Japanese, because they're the ones that have this big acquisition deal. And for some reason, they're in a sexual harassment training seminar. And Sandler brings his remote to that seminar and starts playing with like the color contrast and other features of the remote. And I get it. It's a little funny to see David Hasselhoff in different aspect ratios and color contrast and, you know, showing off the effects, I guess, which weren't that bad, by the way. But at the same time, sexual harassment training seminar is just a weird and frankly not the best place to take that kind of toy. And if you don't take that seminar seriously, it's going to be frowned upon on your sorry ass, and you're probably going to get let go. And frankly, I was surprised that didn't happen to him. I guess he lucked out, though. Who knows? So anyway, the build-up with the Japanese kind of works towards the end of their time in this movie. It turns out that you can also like browse through different languages with this remote in this movie, and Sandler can actually use the language settings to find out what the Japanese people are saying and to figure out what they really want, so then he can use that information to help them with what they really want, which I guess is just the more Americanized version of their architectural vision. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. Doesn't really play much of a part. You know, you have all this talk about the architecture firm and this whole work. And there's some stakes, yeah, but you feel like that's not as much of the conflict as it could be. It's more of work in general as opposed to specific circumstances at work. You have like a mishmash of things going on there. So it's kind of hard to be focused on. You have some other things going on too. Really, you actually get a good sense of what the remote can be good for. It doesn't play like this remote is awful for everything. It does, let you know that there are some good things to use the remote for. It shows some practical purposes. If you have like the flu or whatever and you're going to be stuck in bed all day, you probably want to fast forward through that. Or if you're in like traffic, it's just miserable. You just want to get through that. And it shows you why he's doing all this stuff. It's not totally far-fetched for him to want to, I don't know, fast forward through traffic, fast forward through sickness. Slow down the woman in the sports bra. He probably shouldn't be looking at her that way, but I understand it at least. There's a difference between understanding and agreeing, though. So this shows, there's some good things that come out of the remote. It can be fun. But the problem that happens, and this movie does a good job of this too, is that it shows that Sandler messes around with this remote too much and starts becoming dependent on it, so the remote controls him instead of him controlling the remote. And then the next thing you know, there's this autopilot feature, which, speaks to a couple different levels, I guess. And then he's fast-forwarding through things that he didn't mean to. Or, because he was sick before and fast-forwarded through it, when he's sick again, he fast-forwarded through it. Or when he wants to go to his next promotion, which he thinks is like next week, it ends up being like 10 years later. That sucks for one thing. And he has a hard time with his family because he busts his dad old quarter trick. He hides a quarter behind his ear or something like that. And it just takes a while to really, learn just what's going on. And you can even mute annoying people with the remote, especially when they just go on and on. You're just like, oh my gosh, shut up. It gives you sympathy or empathy. It's honestly tradable here. You get a sense of his frustration, at least some sympathy anyway. And of course, as I said before, the autopilot's that really drives this remote. It's the quote-unquote best feature, and it essentially means that the lights are on but nobody's home. These things are happening, but they weren't intended to happen. You start muting out everyone instead of just that one person. You start skipping through everything instead of just that one thing. It knows you want to fast forward, so you keep fast forwarding. And that was Sandler's biggest problem. And because of all of his fast forwarding and his lack of emotional attachment to his family, that's when Kate Beckinsale and Sean Astin, come together and become newly married. And there are things that I really do enjoy about this movie. I like the setup of Sandler's family, even if it is as American as apple pie, as I said before. And you get to see both aspects of Sandler's personality. You can see he's got some charm, and you can obviously see he's a workaholic. And I feel like the charm was what's missing in a lot of other movies. You can actually see why this guy, is married at that time. Obviously he makes some stupid decisions and ends up being divorced in the process. You really see the development between Sandler and his father in this movie. Sandler thinks that his father is just kind of full of it, but he really learns that love and appreciation. And there is a scene in the movie when Henry Winkler's character passes away, and it sucks. It is sad. And you're just like, damn, that really blows. And that Henry Winkler really, wanted the world for Sandler. And Marge, playing Sandler's mother, is a fantastic choice. And she has that perfect, frantic nature that a mother would have. For sure. Being Marge has really helped her out here. And the casting is really fun, as I said before. I love Jennifer Coolidge. Sandler, I can enjoy in a fair amount of things. I think some things he does are pretty stupid and a little tasteless at times. But overall, he's got that kind of everyday man charm. You know, kind of like the, yeah, you want him to do well in the end, even if he is a bit of a jerk. I wish they used Kate Beckinsale more. She was really fun, but they were just kind of not in the mood to use her, I guess. Christopher Walken's a riot. So cool. Um, yeah, I mean, those are really the main things. You know, David Hasselhoff does his job just fine. You know, Schneider and Spade fooled me enough times that I didn't even notice that they weren't actually from the Middle East. They fooled me at first. I had to, like, listen to behind the scenes to even figure out. You get the pass of watching this. Even though the premise of this movie is a bit cliche, you do need to have this lesson about not working so constantly and to love your family. You really do. And there are a fair number of families that have this structure. Whether or not it's a working mom, whether or not it's a working dad, or whether or not it's, you know, parents that aren't really there for you, even just emotionally, even if they, you know, are there physically and are giving you money. This situation happens often enough that it makes sense to be a Hollywood cliche. Of course, you know, obviously you'd like to see a little bit of variety, but at least it makes sense for me anyway, so I can give that a pass. Um, it has a little bit of that childish humor that you'd expect, but it really is not that over the top. I feel like I've seen it a lot worse in other movies. This is not one of his worst movies. It's actually one of his better ones. It's not his best one by any means, but it is one of his better ones for sure. And it does make a good point about how you're going to have those moments in your life, or even hours or days that just suck, but they make all of those good days in between all the more sweeter. They really do. And this movie does, you know, show that effectively, I feel. Um, it's fairly smart, especially considering, you know, Adam Sandler had his hands in a lot of this. So I really, you know, can't be mad about that. You cannot take a well-made Adam Sandler movie for granted these days. So just keep that in mind. And you really do get this understanding of why Sandler is doing what he's doing. You want to fast forward through the traffic. You want to fast forward through the sickness, but not the health. And then you realize that things go by the wayside when you let this autopilot nature control you instead of making your own decisions, you know? So I feel like it does a good job with that message. Some people would probably find it a bit predictable and overbearing and easy to figure out. I think that comes from watching a large number of movies, you know? I think in terms of like being a full-time critic and really digging at every single movie you ever watch, this one will probably not be the one that gets an Oscar. In fact, I don't think it deserves an Oscar, and I really don't even watch that many movies. But it's predictable, but this is like a good kind of predictable. It's not an awful predictable. It's a passable kind of predictable. And I really just have a mixed bag of feeling about this. It's hard for me to really say, like, I love this movie or I hate this movie. I really don't feel like one specific way about it. You have, I should add too, at the end of the movie, you have the scene where Sandler's character was like, you know, was 400 pounds and then like lost some weight, but still wasn't feeling well because he kept speeding through everything. And at his like son or daughter's wedding, you know, that's when he has the heart attack and everything starts coming to him, and you have this death, and Kate Beckinsale sings that Linger song again, and it really builds that connection between Beckinsale and Sandler. It's fantastic. I really wish they had played with Beckinsale's character more, but they don't, and that is a missed opportunity. And I would say when I was in middle school or high school, more like in high school, but anyway, when I was younger, I was like, this movie's pretty cool. You know, I probably had like a thing or two against it, but I didn't really care. You know, now I'm around like that 60% mark. I like more of it than I didn't like, but there are still some things that, you know, I question. You know, and I've questioned quite a bit after watching this. So I would probably, you know, my grade would be a B, actually. And how you grade this movie really depends on what you compare it to. In regards to the entire Adam Sandler canon, it's probably one of his better movies, aside from the classics Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison, as I said before. And I would say that I liked Mr. Deeds, actually, more than Click, but I feel that Click reigns on top of the rest of the Adam Sandler movie collection. And if you're really looking on a grander scale for this movie, you'd probably say it was alright, but that you've seen better movies with much better endings. And that was my main sticking point with this movie that frustrated the bejesus out of me, was the ending, and that was a cop-out. However, you can be thankful to see that Adam Sandler can, in fact, be part of a competently made movie that at least gives you a few ideas to chew on. And so my final grade is a B. And I am thankful that I did this movie review. And it's been on my mind for a while, actually, because for the last, year or so, I was on a different time of life. I had a little more free time on my hands during the day. I was tidying things through, and I always noticed on The Price is Right that Adam Sandler was actually like a executive producer or director on The Price is Right. It's what? But I guess Drew Carey's the host, so they all hire each other now? Okay, sure. And then I had always watched Click a few times, but had never really watched it for critical or intensive purposes, and I finally did, and I felt this was worth bringing up, especially since I am back in the working world and figuring out how to make this work-life balance truly work. Even if you don't have a family to support besides yourself, a work-life balance is very hard to figure out. And this movie does give me some comfort, even if I recognize all of the cliches and that I can't trust the movie to fix all my problems, but I can learn something from this movie, and that's why I'm thankful for it. And so, anyway, I hope you all have a great day now, and I look forward to doing more of these reviews. This was much overdue, and I'm thankful to get back into this process. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.